The diploma mill industry is a global industry. It's a global problem.
We had many of the victims describe the co-schemers as grandson, family members.
They say the best things in life are free, but you can give them to the birds and bees. I need money. That's what I want. That's what I want. Yeah. That's what I want.
Hi there, I'm Tom Netschew. Welcome to another episode of Fraud Squad TV. Now, fraud as a crime doesn't sound all that bad, does it? It's not a violent crime like homicide or armed robbery, so why pay any attention to it? It's really just about money, and after all, they say that your health is worth much more than money. The truth is that fraud can devastate people's lives. We're going to show you how ordinary people have lost so much money that they are left destitute, depressed, and in some cases even suicidal. Imagine your golden years, having worked your whole life assembling a savings, and in the blink of an eye, having it ripped away from you, never to be recovered, and leaving you destitute. At Fraud Squad TV, we've seen these heartbreaking stories time and time again, and we're here because we don't want it to happen to you. Stay tuned for this episode's stories and valuable tips. How many people in North America fall victim to fraud yearly? 3.4 million, 15.7 million, 30.2 million, or 57.8 million people. More than 30.2 million people fall victim to fraud in North America every year. Fraud has ruined people's lives, broken up families, and caused companies to go out of business. If you've been a victim of fraud, report it. The competition for jobs has never been more fierce than it is today. The temptation to buy a degree or diploma to make your resume that much more competitive, well, it can be overwhelming. So as a result, fraudsters have responded to this market demand by creating counterfeit degrees and diplomas. Now, this practice not only hurts employers who hire someone not qualified for the position, but they also devalue the actual credentials issued by legitimate academic institutions. Take a look at this.
The diploma mill industry probably sells more degrees per year than are granted by the entire Cal State and University of California system.
The cost for bogus degrees is in the neighborhood of a couple $1,000s. So as a result, this fraud is bringing in something like $200 million a year.
Typical price for a degree is anywhere from $500 to a few $1,000s. So that combined with the services means that it's probably a $200 million, did I do that right? Yeah, a $200 million a year industry.
It's possible to buy just about everything and anything on earth, as far as credentials, letters after one's name, degrees, certificates, even particular courses.
It's a credential, and it speaks to what the person has experienced in terms of academic accomplishment. In some cases, it certifies a level of skill as well as knowledge. And those credentials are often used to express an expertise that people pay for.
There are people, of course, who are looking to get the easy degree.
But I didn't even know that happened. That's crazy. We work so hard in school, and okay, if you could just buy your way through everything, that's like, it's horrible.
Just how extensive is this fraud? Well, one politician running for president in Liberia, of all places, actually promoted his educational credentials in his campaign, even though they were purchased from a well-known fraudulent diploma mill.
Presidential elections. Liberia elected the first woman president of any African republic a couple of years ago. She's a magnificent person with impeccable educational credentials. Her primary opponent was a fellow named George Wee, who was a soccer player, who bought himself, someone acquired for him a degree from the very same diploma mill that I was first contacted by when I called to complain about spam.
I wouldn't like to think that someone else is not working hard and is getting the same credit that I am, but I'd like to hope that companies who are reviewing resumes have some way of telling whether or not a degree is fake or not. So
The FBI had a task force set up to fight these diploma mills, but when the task force leader retired in 1993, the internet became the new storefront for these bogus degrees, selling close to 200,000 of them a year.
People work towards a goal, and if people can just buy it, then who's to say who has what? And what does a resume even mean anymore?
There's not as much scrutiny of academic credentials by employers as there should be. And unfortunately, people do get away with using these phony degrees.
I think people that have to buy their way through life are people that can't actually do jobs themselves.
They routinely will steal the entire website from some university, including the faculty. They'll change the phone numbers, and they'll post that until whatever the university they've stolen it from catches on to this and then complains. Some people, I think, are actually fooled by the very sophisticated ones that promise to do a serious evaluation of someone's life experiences.
Now, how does this affect you? Well, if you're a taxpayer, you might be surprised to learn that the government is actually funding some of these places. They're masquerading as legitimate academic institutions, and the government's buying it. All of that money comes straight out of your pocket.
Believe it or not, there are fake universities that have received funding from governments for students to get financial aid programs, for example, for the institution to run various kinds of programs, and the schools don't even really exist except as a website or maybe some printed pamphlets. And believe it or not, they're getting our tax dollars.
We're here with Craig Hannaford one more time to talk about this type of fraud. These are real scumbags. What can an employer do to make sure that the credentials he's being presented are authentic?
Well, first thing an employer should do is check to make sure that the educational institution exists, that it's a bona fide institution. So you can do that by checking with the state agency or the national registry to make sure the university exists.
Okay, so this is, again, a semi-rhetorical question. Is it safe to assume that if I'm buying a degree from the back of a magazine, I'm putting my money into the hands of fraudsters?
Well, you definitely are putting your money into the hands of fraudsters, but you got to look at yourself in the mirror. Maybe you're also a fraudster if you're trying to pawn off the fact that you've got a degree that really you did nothing to earn.
Are you saying that my 30 years of experience in business doesn't mean that I deserve an MBA just like that?
Well, I can give you one, Tom, if you want one, but really, an employer really should be looking at what are the courses you've taken in order to earn that degree and whether you have the qualifications.
Real universities and colleges have to be concerned with this. What are they doing to make sure that they're not being undermined by these fraudsters?
Well, they are concerned because, it undermines the whole reputation of various institutions with all these, false degrees floating around there. So they are taking steps to police this type of fraud and trying to shut down some of these, fraudulent institutions.
Give me a couple of telltale signs to know that if a diploma is fraudulent.
Well, often, if it's from a diploma from a university from a foreign country, you've never heard of the institution, they don't have a very good website, you can't phone them and talk to a registrar. Those are some signs that maybe there's some questionable activity going on here.
They're all good tips, but if you want a couple of more tips, hang on, Craig's got some more so that you can prevent this type of fraud.
Verify with the academic institution that issued the degree or diploma as to its authenticity. In order to obtain a degree or diploma, you have to earn it. You can't simply buy it. If you are an employer, ask the prospective employee to supply you with a copy of their course transcripts and grades. Take all steps necessary to verify the academic credentials of the job applicant. There's a lot of fake diplomas out there.
We'll be right back with more Fraud Squad TV after this. What percentage of resumes contain fraudulent educational degrees? 20%, 30%, 40%, or 50%? 20% of all resumes contain fraudulent educational degrees. Some companies have even hired their CEO based on fake credentials. If you're hiring someone based on their education, make sure the academic institution actually exists and that the potential employee really accomplished the degree that they claim to have completed. A certificate of deposit is a guaranteed security bond, like a protected savings account offered by banks, trust companies, and credit unions. And while legitimate institutions honor these CDs,
Independent sales representatives often charge outrageous commissions that really cut into your earnings. And since many CDs mature in about 30 years or so, you're often not aware about what you've paid until many years into the term. Now, who are the intended victims? Well, for the most part, it's the elderly, with fraudsters often setting up shop just steps away from seniors' homes. Let's take a look.
After my father died, my stepfather died, I got full responsibility of my mother, but I didn't have control of her money. She asked for advice, and I suggested that she put her money in a mutual bond fund.
After being lured by a promise of 7.5% interest, Donald Mooney's mother bought a CD at her local strip mall. That seemed like a good idea at the time, but she'd soon learned she'd made a big mistake.
There was a big banner, CD, 7.5% interest. And she made the mistake of calling, finding out about the 7.5% interest.
The case first came to light to the FBI through a couple of different means. We received information from local banks that some of their customers were appearing at the teller stations and withdrawing large sums of money and were accompanied by salesmen from a company called Leisure World Financial. The salesman told the teller and the teller operations supervisors that they were assisting the customer in getting a higher interest rate, higher than that bank could offer, and by the opinion of the bank supervisor, higher than what could really be possible.
Donald's mother decided that she needed some extra money. She returned to the strip mall outlet to cash in some of her certificates. She was absolutely shocked to learn that the storefront seemed abandoned.
When I got there, door was locked. You could see through the glass door. All the mail was laying on the floor. And a sign on the door with a phone number.
They were offering legitimate CDs, but what they were doing is they manipulated the interest rate. So for instance, a bank might be offering a CD that would mature in 30 years and it would be worth $300,000 when it matured. That CD might only cost $50,000 to purchase, and at the end of 30 years it'd be worth $300,000. CD Services was going to investors and telling them, if you give me $100,000, I'll give you a return in 30 years, it'll be worth $300,000. You'll be getting a 6% return every year, and so at the end of 30 years, your $100,000 will be worth $300,000. But unbeknownst to them, CD Services only had to pay $50,000 for that CD and pocketed the $50,000 as commissions.
Now, totally disturbed by this news, Donald tracked down the sales agent and demanded his mother's money back. He was surprised to learn that it hadn't been invested at all.
I called him and he says, oh yeah, that money wasn't invested in a CD. I'll give you the money back. And I asked him, this doesn't quite ring true. Did you put the money in your mattress? And he says, no, I'll give you money market interest on it.
It's interesting because the guys that were involved in this scheme came from securities houses. A couple of them actually had Series 7 licenses. And while they were working young, out of college, or hadn't quite completed college, working at prestigious securities firms, they had developed a client base and come to realize that if you sold these types of CDs that they had basically come up with, that you could take a huge commission, such a huge commission that the legitimate firms that they worked for told them that they were very uncomfortable with what these salesmen were doing at the company, and basically told them to leave.
Donald did manage to get his mother's money back, but several other seniors had lost their money. As Donald discovered, many of these scumbags would specifically target seniors in frail and near-death conditions, get their signatures from their bedside.
And they said, well, this one's gonna pass out any minute, so we'll just divide the money up right now. When you're on Medicare, you're on everybody's list. I get health care offers, real estate offers, offer after offer, things that I just can't pass up if I listen to them.
In Seal Beach and Laguna Woods, California, the the CD fraudsters set up shop directly next to seniors' homes and retirement communities, often preying on the loneliness of senior citizens.
These old people are very lonely. And if anybody would take the time to sit down and talk to them for 15 minutes, that's their best friend in the world. They would give them 15 minutes of their time.
We had many of the victims describe the co-schemers as grandson, family members, loved ones that they trusted immensely.
Senior citizens are not interested in any kind of risk for their investments because they need that money to live. And so the purchase of the CDs is just the fact that they're selling CDs is clearly targeting a senior citizen market.
We had one co-schemer who was brought in for his book of business because he had a book of business of the near dead. He had the oldest clients that you could get that had money, were living primarily in leisure world communities in Orange County that could invest and that trusted him immensely and would invest. And so Chris Cook, our lead defendant, specifically brought him into the scheme because of his book of old people.
You can't depend on anything that a guy that you meet on the street would tell you.
It's also immensely satisfying to see the defendant be convicted after a very lengthy trial where he contested everything and didn't actually believe he had done anything wrong. So to hear guilty verdicts read and see his face was very satisfying. When he was a young, greedy individual with a family of his own, taking advantage of these elderly individuals.
All your life, you have a 401k, you have a house that's paid for, and everybody wants a piece of it.
We're here with Craig Hannaford talking about these certificates of deposit. Now, these type of bank products are usually considered safe. How can we ensure that this representative is actually depositing our money and not running off in a big scam?
You know, that's just really scary about this story. People think that CDs are really safe, and they are safe. But it's the representative who could be the criminal, the one who's going to grab your money. You should check to see whether that person is registered with the state regulating agency to make sure they're licensed to sell these types of product. You know, do checks with friends, and that's one of the best ways, is get references from a friend who's had a satisfactory experience with an investment advisor.
That makes a lot of sense, as in most things that you're going to purchase. Now, these people went to an office in a mall. Should I assume that if the office is in a mall that it's illegitimate?
Now, you know, I don't want to tell people that they shouldn't do business with somebody because they have an office in a mall or, you know, on Main Street, because there's lots of really legitimate investment advisors out there who are, you know, have offices like that. But do your due diligence. Check to make sure this person is reputable and that there are other satisfied customers that he has.
Well, that makes sense. So if I do go to the mall, you're saying check if he's reputable. Okay. How do I do that?
Well, again, you can check with your state regulating agency, check with ask for references, and follow up on those checks.
But is there a document that he'll have in his office that says he's legit and associated with the bank?
Well, there may be some sort of document like that, but people have been known to forge those types of documents, so you never know. You know, if he is representing a bank, go down to the bank and double check to make sure that there is a legitimate relationship there.
Okay, over 25 years in the business, you have seen lots of these type of documentations. Just give me one red flag to look for in an agreement that I'm reading.
Well, I think one of the things you want to look for, if there are large upfront fees that you have to pay in order to make an investment. You know, if they're saying you have to pay 10, 20% of your investment upfront to them in order to place the investment, that's a big red flag. And one of the other things, if they give you lots of documentation to read and try and understand, if you don't understand it, take it to a lawyer or an accountant to have it reviewed.
Thanks. As usual, that's a lot of help. If you're interested in a few more tips, Craig's got some for you right now.
Before purchasing a certificate of deposit, ask the sales representative to document what commission they are receiving. Ask the sales agent who they are representing and contact the company directly to verify the claims being made. Have an independent accountant or lawyer verify the details of the certificate. Never purchase a certificate of deposit until you are absolutely sure of the legitimacy of the investment.
And we'll be right back with more Fraud Squad TV.
How much is lost worldwide due to Ponzi schemes? 25 billion, 35 billion, 55 billion, or $75 billion? Worldwide losses to Ponzi schemes are estimated at $35 billion annually. These schemes target everyone from ordinary people just trying to increase their income to seasoned investors. Anytime you're thinking about making an investment, make sure you check it out very carefully.
Hi, I'm Naomi Joy. The internet has become a huge marketplace for buying and selling everything from music to houses. Often you can get a great deal, but sometimes it's only a scam. Last year, internet auction fraud accounted for almost 45% of consumer crime complaints. The most common scam is a fake check, and you may not know it's fake until you've already spent the money. So when you're buying or selling anything online, use a well-known escrow service. Never accept payment that is more than the agreed upon price. If someone you don't know wants to pay you by check but wants you to wire some of the money back, beware, it's a scam. Now, Fraud Squad TV takes it to the street to hear more of your stories about how fraudsters have tried to take your money.
I was trying to sell a rug that I had bought, which no longer went with my living room, and I received an email saying that someone wanted to buy my rug for almost twice what I was selling it, and they were going to send me a money order for the rug. And so we realized that what they do is they take your or you mail the merchandise, I guess, or they pick it up, and then you cash the money order at the bank, because it takes some time for the banks to realize it's a false money order. You take the money, give some of it back to them, and then a week or so later the bank calls you and says, this was a fraudulent money order, we need the money back, you are responsible for it. So then you are out your merchandise, which should have been my rug, and you're also out the money that you paid them back, that they said was the excess money because they overpaid you for the merchandise. I would say that if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
I want to buy a dog off the computer for a gift for my girlfriend, and the guy said to send the money order first, so I sent the money order, and he erased his program off the computer, everything, and he never sent us back anything. Do more research before you do anything. And that's what I didn't do.
Thanks for sharing your stories. By telling us your stories, we just might prevent someone else from falling for the same scam.
Remember, we're all in this fighting fraud together.
That's what I want.